All right, welcome back. Bruce Feldman, Big 12 Media Days. Texas heavy favorite, Oklahoma only third. Concerns there. Lot of pressure on Sark. Now at Washington, USC, and Texas, the team got big, fast, and aggressive very quickly. They have been about a 500 team in his career in close games. People knock him for the details. They're not always buttoned up. Say what you want. Jim Harbaugh's 500 in one-score games, too. So as Bruce Feldman joins us, Fox Sports reporter, I've always liked Sark. I think he's a great recruiter, a great quarterback developer. There's a lot of things I like. Do you when you people say there's pressure on him, what if they lose 4 games? Is pressure fired? I mean, what does pressure mean?
I think pressure would be lose 5 games, 7-5, because the expectations are really high. I mean, as you said, the preseason conference pick to win in the last year before they jump into the deep end of the pool, quite frankly, where you're going to the SEC up next. A lot of people look at this roster. The offensive line has matured after last year. He's got a 5-star quarterback, and it's, this wasn't as an Arch Manning. This is Quinn Ewers. I spent some time with Quinn Ewers yesterday. Nobody doubts his arm. He's got himself in the best shape of his life, lost about 20 pounds, he told me. Everybody's talked about how he's matured. He looked great when he was healthy against Alabama. They probably should have won that game. They didn't. Then he was really up and down after that. As you said, Sark is really good with quarterbacks. He's really good with offense. I think the biggest challenge for them, and obviously they lost Bijan Robinson, who's phenomenal. Their receiving core is really good. Their tight end's really good. I think it's a consistency for them. To me, that's the biggest issue with Sark. He took Washington when they were awful and got them respectable, but they didn't get much better than that until Chris Peterson took over. USC almost imploded right after he got there, and now we're waiting to see. He's never, for all the things you said, he's never had a 10-win season. So this is the time now to say, okay, can he do it? Can they have not just some moments? Can they sustain it? Can they not stub their toe at times? Because the Big 12 is just good enough where almost everybody's dangerous.
Yeah. No, you get on those Saturday night games, everybody spreads it out 4 and 5 wide. You fall behind, you get into a shootout, and crazy stuff happens. I want to talk about, I don't know what the future of the Pac-12 is, nor of Deion Sanders. When he first got the job, I thought it was a weird fit. And then I remember the weekend it happened, I'm like, well, he'll make them interesting. People will discuss them, and a big part of recruiting is getting noticed. So he's cleaned the program out. You're kind of, I mean, some of the stories are down to 40 players. What should I expect first year? What are they going to look like? What do they have besides a really talented quarterback who's Deion's son?
Yeah, if it was a 7-on-7 game, I think they'd be pretty dangerous, right? I mean, he beat everybody in the country, including his alma mater, Florida State, to get Travis Hunter, the number 1 recruit in the entire country, to get him to go to Jackson State. And he followed him now to Boulder, as well as a bunch of other guys. Like, there are good receivers that he has brought into this, some pretty good defensive backs. I think the thing to keep in mind was Colorado was awful last year. They were by far the worst Power 5 program. They won 1 game. So they're going to be a lot better. The question is 4-8, that's marked improvement. But considering the hype around the program, I think, and look, we're going to have him on Big Noon the first 2 weeks of the season. He has got everybody's attention. The transfer portal is the thing that has given him the flexibility to completely overhaul the roster, which needed a lot of overhaul. What I wonder about, though, is both offense and defensive lines, a lot of those bodies were not even in there because a lot of this overhaul on the roster is happening after spring football. So now all these things that go to really the continuity of, especially with an offensive line, it's going to be all on the fly adjusting, right? And so I think the question is going to be, he's going to get the eyes and ears of a lot of big time recruits who are like, hey, I want to check out what Deion's doing, because he is way more charismatic than any head football coach in the country. It's not even close. So they're going to visit, they're going to get on Zoom, say, hey, it's Deion, I want to see what he's about. And I think he will, get more talent in there. I think the first year, if they win 5 games, if they can somehow get to a bowl game, that would be huge. But even if they get to 4 or 5 and don't get embarrassed in some of these games early when people are watching against TCU, against Nebraska, when that's another big TV game, I think that'll get momentum, because after those games, then they have USC and Oregon, and it could get rough. I think if you can just sustain it and show, hey, we have a chance to be competitive and give some of the other pieces time to gel, it's going to be an interesting subplot in the Pac-12, no doubt.
So Harbaugh has really changed the narrative. Last 2 years, he's beaten Ohio State. They'll be favored again. It's probably his best team. And there's been some missteps. He's lost coordinators, the NFL stuff, but it's all sort of power of personality, and it's worked. Now, it worked at San Diego. It worked with the Niners. It worked at Stanford. It worked immediately at Michigan, but it really didn't connect until about 2 years ago, because you got to beat Ohio State, and they've really found a clarity in their program. They are physical, whereas Ohio State's good, but I feel there's a little fuzziness around exactly their toughness. What are they? We never talk about Ryan Day. We talk about Harbaugh. If Harbaugh won another one, 3 straight, I like Ryan Day. John Cooper was a great coach. But once he started stubbing his toe against Michigan, the Wolves turned. Is everything good at Ohio State? Is everything good there now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, the guy's 31-2 in the Big Ten. It's just the 2 have been the last 2 years against the arch rival, and honestly, they haven't been close. I mean, I was at that game last year. It's in Columbus. Everybody thought Ohio State was going to get their revenge, and they got smashed.
Yeah.
In the second half of that game, just physically manhandled. And by the way, that happened without Blake Corum, probably Michigan's best player. And it happened with Donovan Edwards, the other running back, who's a really good player, but he was banged up in the game. And they still dominated it. Jim Harbaugh, what he has done is, much like he said he was going to do when Stanford was terrible and Pete Carroll was running college football, he was like, we're going to build the bullies of the Pac-10 at the time. And they did that, and he did it fast. He made Michigan good, but he didn't get them really over the hump until the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And they are the most physical team in the league.
They are. It's
beat Ohio, period, and he embraced it. Now, to me, the biggest question on that side of it is, can they beat Georgia? Can they do that where, they have everybody back and all the leaders? From the Ryan Day part of it, if they lose again, and I agree with you, this is the most talented team Jim Harbaugh's had at Michigan. It's going to be in Ann Arbor this year. You don't have C.J. Stroud now. You're going to be breaking in a new quarterback. Obviously, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., the great receiver, maybe the best player in the country, and a bunch of other talent. But it's going to be an uphill. Like, they'll probably be an underdog in that game. If Michigan beats them again for a third time, I think there's going to be a lot of apoplectic Ohio State fans. But also remember this, they came within a missed field goal in the last second of beating Georgia in the playoff, and then they probably win the national title even in spite of getting
That's right.
smashed. So yeah. I don't know how you can run Ryan Day off, even if he loses a third game. I mean, he's not losing to anybody else. Yeah. I mean, he's a terrific coach. It's just, if you're in Columbus, you got to figure out, how do we match their physicality? And that's got to be the only thing that really matters to them.
So Nick Saban goes to the podium about 3 times a year. Regardless of the question, he has something to say, and he finds a way to pivot to it. So he's been cranky on this NIL stuff. And my takeaway is he's losing recruiting battles to Texas money, and it's ticking him off. So now all of a sudden he talks about fairness and parity, which he didn't care about for years. So when he's cranky about the NIL, what is your take on it?
I think he's also concerned about locker room dynamics and how do we manage this? Because I've talked to a lot of coaches, and he is in this boat where it's like it can create a lot of significantly more imbalance than there already is.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about a lot of recruits coming in to programs where they're basically getting paid huge amounts of money.
Yeah.
Where they haven't done anything yet. Look,
Yeah.
I know you follow recruiting probably way more than you should, but
yes.
There are guys of, and it's like, wait, this guy's getting 7 figures. He's done nothing.
Yeah.
And they come in, and now all of a sudden, how do you manage that in the locker room? Look, Nick Saban is a guy who I think thinks about a lot of that stuff, and he hears a lot of stories, and he has become a not just a mentor, but a kind of the conscience of a lot of college coaches and football coaches. And I think he knows, because he's heard the stories and he sees it coming. And that's one of the issues that I think that he is trying to sound the alarm on. And I think a lot of his colleagues are also concerned about it, because it also gets into like roster management and how to, which affects the coaches because they're trying to control everything, and now they can't control that. So that's something that bugs him. But I think he also knows players see these things, and now they're going to be more inclined to jump into the portal rather than stick it out and battle through it.
Yeah. Finally, unfortunately, I'm viewed as a bit of a USC homer. It's very hurtful. But that said,
who thinks that? who could think that?
Everybody in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think USC is really good. They may not have a dominant singular receiver, but they're deep. They're deep at running back. They're defensively, they've gotten bigger up front. So the guys that transferred in this year are like all conference-ish, NFL body-ish. Last year, they were just taking bodies. So I do believe that they're in the top 5 or 6. I think LSU, USC, Michigan, Clemson could be good. Obviously, Bama, Georgia. When you talk to coaches, are a lot of people saying, yeah, LA hype, or in your world, is there a belief, because it is mine, that I think you can score your way to the playoff? You can score your way there. I don't know if you'll win it, but you can score your way there. I think USC's a viable contender for that. Your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, they feel very much like the Baker Mayfield team that OU was when Lincoln, got, and they lost to Georgia in a shootout in the Rose Bowl.
That's right.
They had, I agree with what you said. USC took transfers last year, and some of them were okay, but they got better caliber of athletes and players now on defense this wave.
Yes.
And I think it's year 2 for the defense. They were imploding and melting down in the fourth quarter of games. I talked to Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator. He was with Lincoln at OU, and he knows exactly what he's getting into. I think the biggest challenges for them are upgrading their talent, which I think they've done, getting more physical and their bodies bigger and stronger, which is a process, but I think they're getting closer to that on defense. But I also think it's the mentality of knowing we cannot just rely on, Caleb's going to save us in a shootout in the fourth quarter, because it didn't work against Utah both times. And honestly, it didn't work against Tulane in the bowl game. And I think that fixing that mentality is the thing that I think will keep them from being, if they can show they can do that, they go from being a top 10 team to a legit playoff contender that can to do damage. Because I tell you this, after watching Ohio State against Georgia last year, I don't think anybody wants to play Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams in the playoff.
Yeah.
Because if that guy gets hot, and he usually is, you got to feel like you may have to score every possession. Because I don't care how many 5 stars Georgia has on defense. He's going to be a problem. And if he's healthy, and last year at the end of the year, right, his hamstring kind of gave in against Utah in the Pac-12 title game. But you have a puncher's chance when you are that good on offense. Now the defense just needs to, I don't want to say hold up its end. They need to be competitive. It cannot be giving up 17 points in the fourth quarter, in the last month of the season every time out.
Bruce Feldman, Fox Sports, Big 12 Media Day. A lot of heat this year on Sark. Can't wait to watch it. I like them. I like their athletes. We'll see. Bruce, as always, good seeing you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.